This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Today's episode of Two Bad Hombres is brought to you by The Athletic, premium coverage for passionate Detroit sports fans. Listeners of this podcast can save 30% off the first year of an annual subscription. Yeah, you heard me correctly. You can save 30% off the first year of a subscription to The Athletic by going and visiting theathletic.com/DSP. Why subscribe to The Athletic? Well, they got great in-depth features. They got writers covering all major Detroit sports. They got great in-depth features. They had a great article covering the return of Justin Verlander, what it was like. Daily content from The Athletic. All the hosts here, we read it every single day, and it definitely is something that you want to be a part of. Become a member of a growing sports community. Subscribe to The Athletic and save. Visit theathletic.com/DSP.
I was trying to get it out here. I want them dead presidents. I want to pull up, head spin, get it, get fly. I got 6 jobs. I don't get tired. I don't get tired. I don't get tired. I don't get tired. Get it, get fly. I got 6 jobs.
And we are still not tired on this week's episode of Two Bad Hombres. I am your host, Vito Geronimo, alongside my usual sidekick and broadcast partner in fun. That is the Doc from Doc and Jack, John Charles Macaroon. John, how are you doing?
Vito, welcome to the weekend. Holy cow, what a week in Detroit sports. I think everybody got a chance to spew their venom, spew their anger regarding what they saw Monday night. Holy cow. It was a performance for the ages, and not in good terms.
No.
Not in glowing terms at all. Now, the entire week, everybody's talked about, the performance, Matt Patricia, what happened. But to start the podcast, I want to bring up this issue before we get into the rest of the show. Some people have commented on one aspect of that game that was very unique, in that the fans booed that game pretty much right when things started going south, and it was loud, it was audible, it was passionate, and I liked it. But some in the media have come out and said, whoa, it's only game one. What's with all the vitriol? What's with all the anger from the Detroit fans? And I thought when I read that, I was like, wow, if you don't know why the fans of Detroit are angry with the Lions, I'm not a podcaster. I'm not somebody that sits here and says you shouldn't boo professional athletes, especially when you put that on film. Because remember, you are taking these people's hard-earned money, and it's not cheap. We're talking about a situation in which to go to Ford Field on a Monday night game, the average ticket is going to be $70 for one person, and that doesn't include parking. If you want to indulge in any food, it's a lot of money to go to a game, and for a lot of season ticket holders, they're buying tickets at a rate of, for 16 games, around $1,500, and so they're excited. Everybody wants to go down and have a good time, and they want to see a good product. Mm-hmm. And what they saw Monday was a disaster. They saw a team that looked like it quit. They saw a team that didn't look like they wanted to be there. And so for the fans to boo, I'm all for it. I don't feel like, if you're a professional athlete and you don't want the fans to boo, give them a reason to cheer. That's it. And I would not take it personally. I would not get upset. I'm not going to turn around and flick off the fans or get mad. I think Golden Tate had the best answer. He's like, yeah, it's disappointing. It's tough to hear, especially how loud it was. It was very loud. And it was just a situation in which the crowd was very angry, very upset. They have a reason to boo. When you're in the stands, obviously you don't want to be cussing in front of kids or anything like that, but booing is a sign that you still care, that you're upset with what you're seeing. And especially with what that Lions team did on Monday, they deserve to be booed, and they deserve for all the fans to leave midway through the third quarter.
The thing is, why do Lions fans keep paying the mighty dollar for these tickets?
Well, Vito,
all of this money, it's way too much money. Like you said, it's overpriced stuff.
It is, and I have not gone personally down to Ford Field unless it was free for the better part of a decade. But here's the reason, Vito. There's only 8 contests at home, and then 10 if you go to the preseason. Most people don't. Most people kind of spread them around to their friends, or because you don't see anything fun. So the NFL, they stick you because they charge you full price. They charge you for 10 games, even though 2 of them are essentially practice games. So that's why it's only 10 times a year you get to see your football team. So I get it, but yeah, if you ask me to compare the in-home game experience or the bar experience with your buddies versus the stadium experience, it's not the same. I always choose the in-home experience. It's way funner. You get your own bathroom. You get your own food. You can hang out with your buddies. You don't have to worry about rules. You don't have to worry about ushers. You don't have to worry about, drunk people fighting in the stands. No worries at all. No $50 parking or trying to walk or figure anything out. And then leaving, I'm not trying to wait no 40 minutes in no parking lot trying to get out of a building. Heck no. So I definitely feel like the home experience is way better than going to Ford Field. But why would people be against fans booing? And
yeah, I don't
get
that. I don't get that either, because you know what? You're being paid all this money, which Matthew Stafford is. He was the highest paid quarterback, one of the highest paid quarterbacks and players still in the NFL. All these other overpaid probably athletes right on the Lions. Well, guess what? When you're struggling, people have the right to criticize you and will boo you. I don't blame the fans for booing the Lions on Monday because they were despicable. That was inexcusable. You went 9-7 last year. You were playing a rookie quarterback, not a great Jets team, and you get blown out by 31 points. The Lions fans had all the right in the world to boo and to leave early. Like people that were faulting the Lions fans or criticizing them for leaving early as well in the fourth quarter of that game when the game was far out of hand. Guess what? The players were quitting on the game. Matt Patricia quit on the game. It looked like he mouthed maybe through a video on Twitter that now has spread like wildfire that maybe he said, I give up. Guess what? The players were. The fans did then too. So why couldn't the fans leave? I have no problem in the world. No problem at all with the fact that the Lions fans decided to boo and decided to leave early from that game.
Yeah, it was outrageous, Vito. You and I were covering the Detroit Tigers. We were just, sitting back, enjoying Justin Verlander returning, kind of doing the nostalgia thing. And then to hear what happened, I mean, wow, it snowballed. It was unbelievable. Before we get to the hilarity of your week, do you think the Lions turn it around? Do you think that Matt Patricia does get this to at least 6 to 10 wins this year? Or based on what we saw, are the Boo Birds going to return? Because there's a marquee matchup after the San Francisco game. Home, Sunday Night Football, a whole day of drinking. You got New England coming to town. Matt Patricia v. Bill Belichick. He's going to want to embarrass his former coordinator. Could you imagine a Sunday night game, national media, nationally televised game, everybody there, and it becomes a clown show? I mean, you literally could have people booing Fire Patricia, chanting for Castle. You could have a really toxic situation if the Detroit Lions don't turn this around. I see bad signs ahead.
I see 7 wins right now for the Lions at the most. So I'm going to say over 6. But if they lose week 2 to San Francisco this weekend against San Fran on the road, guess what? That goes down to 6 victories, in my opinion, for the Lions. So you're already, if you lose week 2, you're at 6-10 at the best for me. And then week 3, you have to play the Patriots. It's at home, but Sunday night in prime time, lots of fans, lots of national media attention. And Matt Patricia's going to play his teacher. Bill Belichick wants to annihilate his student in Matt Patricia. He wants to make him look silly. The Lions look silly. It caused Patricia to try to figure out what the hell happened to my team on Sunday Night Football. So I could see it being epically bad for the Lions on Sunday Night Football in week 3, too, in front of a national TV audience, where I could see them getting blown out by 20-plus points in that matchup. But first and foremost, what happens in week 2? I'm going to say a loss now. I thought a victory. I'm going to say a loss from the Lions. So even if they recover, which I think they will a little bit from week 1 and will look better, they're on the road against a much improved San Francisco team that is led by a supposed franchise passer in Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, a guy in Jimmy G who I don't believe is that as of yet, at least, because he still has to prove that to me. But I don't like the Lions' odds in week 2. And if they go 0-2, they're at 6-10 then at best this season, Doc, in my opinion.
Oh, boy. Yeah, it wasn't the start that anybody envisioned because, look, you can lose a game. You can, play a rookie quarterback, play a Jets team that only had about 5 wins last year. But to play in that fashion, that just resulted in the fans booing. And that's what happens when you don't perform. And especially in Detroit, I think the comment that maybe Bob Quinn is going to regret saying is that, I fired Jim Caldwell because he had 9 wins and I see this team being better. And maybe he should have said, look, I see the end game being a consistent championship team similar to the organizations I've worked for in the past. But what happens is I think people expect that this Lions team is going to be better, at least perform to the level of, a ticket holder feeling like he earned his money. But, man, Vito, when you look at all the negatives, the fans chanting Jets, 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 Jets across the country, all our fans leaving, and then the biggest insult that I don't think a lot of people are talking about as much as I feel like it was a big deal. ESPN covered the game. They're televising your contest, and they decided, look, this game is so not worthy of being on our air, we're going to bump it off of our air and put it on another network. And I've never really seen that. I mean, I've seen cutaways and things like that, but it was really at that time a moment where I said, wow. I immediately tweeted on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast. I said, this is where we've come to. The Lions can't even maintain time on a network because of how bad it was. But, I mean, in Detroit, we still had a chance to watch it on local television. They didn't cut away. But nationally, they said, peace out, we're cutting you away. And I think that was really another lowlight in the history of the Detroit Lions, getting canceled by Monday Night Football and just getting bumped. And tough times all around, man. It was disappointing, too, because a lot of fans are counting on the Lions to at least do some things and perform because of all the other sports teams. But it's not going to happen this year. You know, another year, 2018, of sports in Detroit, resulting in not all that much.
It's a lost season already for the Lions, you could say. And you know what? Anticipation before the season for the Lions to be a good, relevant ball club this season, I think we're going by the wayside. Those expectations and just the anticipation was going by the wayside as well for the Lions to be something of relevance this year. And now, like I said, I believe they're going to be under 500. And they could be far under 500 based on what they do in Week 2, because if they lose Week 2, they're going to be 0-3 at the end of Week 3, losing to New England. Like, who's going to pick the Lions to win that game, even at home on Sunday Night Football, against the Tom Brady and Bill Belichick-led New England Patriots? Nobody's going to pick the Lions to win that game, and nobody should in their right mind that's not crazy should be picking that game for the Lions to win.
Yeah, it's a situation in which they could lose to San Fran and play good. I mean, you know Lions history where everybody calls them out, everybody thinks they're going to lose, and New England is prone to an offensive attack, and Matt Patricia does know some things, but the bigger issue that everyone's talking about is, has Matt Patricia already lost the team? Because people are talking, people are chirping from that locker room saying, we're not exactly happy at the amount of work we're doing, so it's all bad all around, Vito. It's not a good situation. They might have to call the DOC in to do an intervention and say, hey, look, Matt Patricia's the leader. You got to follow him. If you don't like it, you're probably not going to win year one versus the new head coach. They're not going to fire him year one. So if you don't want to get your NFL career shortened, you better step up and play for this man. And look, if you don't like him, when it's your time to leave and be a free agent, peace out. But at this point in time, play for your contract, play for your career, because if you put that on film, people are going to know that you're a quitter, and nobody across the league wants that on film, and you better step up. You don't have to like the man, but you better respect him. He has rings, and you don't.
But not as a head coach. And guess what? Randy Moss quit on the Raiders. He found employment with the New England Patriots. They went to a Super Bowl when he went to New England, and he resurrected his career. That's a Hall of Famer right there. So guys do quit on a team, they move on to somewhere else, and are right and can look really, really darn good. And Patricia, maybe he's doing this too, by the way, to get rid of these veterans, to rid himself of these guys, because these guys don't want to play for him. They're going to leave via free agency in the offseason after the season does conclude. Think of that as well. Maybe that's a ploy for Patricia to get rid of these guys that he doesn't want on his roster, because he knows they're not going to work hard for him. Hard enough, at least, for him.
I like your message, Vito. You're going to walk up in there and be like, look, you guys can quit and just go to another team. Randy Moss did it.
Randy Moss did it. Look at him, Hall of Famer. Come on.
That's not the
it's
message,
Shrine
Vito.
Canton, man. Worked out for him. Can work out maybe for you. So move on. Quit on your team. No, I'm not a quitter. I'm not advocating quitting on your team or anything. But it looks like he wants to rid himself of these veterans that don't want to work hard for him. He's going to get rid of them. They're going to be moving on in the offseason because he knows that in the back of his head, and these players know that our free agents at the end of the season, they have that outlet to leave the Lions. So guess what? They're quitting, but they can find employment somewhere else, and Matt Patricia will be so happy once they find employment somewhere else, and he gets his own players in-house. Think of that, too.
Understood, Vito. Now, you had shared with me prior to us recording on this weekend that you had a potential chance to go on a date, and you said that there was an opportunity for you to go have a good time, but at the end you captioned it with, but it never happened.
It never happened. Let me explain now. So it wasn't a date that I really had a chance to go on. It was a date in which the lady fabricated that it did occur. So it's a date that never actually happened, as I put into the text that I sent to you before the show. A date that never happened because I never was there. She made it up. She acted like it happened, and she told people that it did happen. I wasn't there. It didn't happen. I'm a man of accountability, okay? I'm not going to make it up. I'm a journalist at heart. I do it for a career kind of here. So I'm a man of factuality, using facts. And guess what? The date did not occur.
It never happened.
Never happened.
Why did you say
so
it
this
did?
is where it's weird, and it's an interesting story. She made it up that she had met me and didn't know of my size, my lack of height and huge stature. And then she said, well, she saw me at the date. I was there before her, and that I was really nice and funny, but she didn't know that I was a little person. And I think, honestly, she ran with the story because I was a little person. She was enamored by it and thought, oh, I'm going to tell my friends I went out with the little person when it never actually occurred. So she used it to get, her friends riled up, and it never occurred. It got back to me through, so somebody that knows a friend of mine, like a mutual friend, really a relative of him, he found out through this woman, and this woman worked with the girl that made up the story that we went on the date together. And I met her through Tinder. I'll admit it, okay? I did talk to her. I know who it is. But she made it up completely because the date never happened.
Wow, Vito.
Think about that. So somebody's making up dates with me. Come on. Am I that big of a person? I mean, odd. And I think she was enamored by my size, wanted to run with it and make it sound like, oh, I went out with a little person, then tell all her friends. And make a big, almost a mockery out of it, or a big fun story for her friends to giggle about with her, which I didn't like, and I don't advocate that either, and I think that's wrong. What she did there, when that never happened. And we talked, it never led to anything like that, to anything that would have amounted to a date. There was no date that was going to happen, Doc.
Okay, so now one person does know that it never happened. Now it's going to start to get back like, hey, wait a minute, you're lying.
Oh, she's a liar. And then she was found out to be a liar. I guess she got fired from her job because of lying, too. So she's a chronic liar, which makes sense to me because she lied about this incident, too, for no good reason, when I barely even knew the girl. I talked to her a little bit via Tinder, and it never was going to lead to a date, never led to a date. It's not going to lead to a date now.
Okay, so it
crazy.
It got back to you that you were there and that the date went okay, but that she dumped you.
Another date ever happened? No, it's not like she was cruel in terms of that. Like she said, oh, forget you because you're 4'7", whatever I am. She didn't say that. She just said that she was surprised that I was this short and that she met up with me and we had a date. She never sounded like, or made it sound like, oh, it was so bad that we weren't going to go on another date, and we never did. It wasn't that, actually.
So will there be a confrontation? Like, are you going to message her saying, why did you pass this message along? It doesn't make any sense.
I never messaged her after that. Well, in terms of regarding that fake incident that she made up, I've messaged her just to kind of see if I could then talk about that. Because I didn't directly bring that up, and the next time that I did, try to conversate with her. She hasn't responded to any of my snaps, by the way, via Snapchat. We're on Snapchat together, too. So I know what she looks like. She knows what I look like. So she found out through that, because I don't think I ever even told her that I was this short. But by the way, when I meet up with a woman on a date, I'm going to tell her beforehand, because I don't want to surprise her, embarrass myself, and embarrass her. Yeah. I would never do that. And I never have done that. I tell the person pretty soon up front, after I meet or start talking to her, that I am a little person, I am of this stature, 4'7", or whatnot. So I tell them pretty much right off the bat so they know going into it that if we do go out on a date, well, I'm going to be this. You're not going to get a 6'4" dude. You're not going to get Nick Schmiegel or a big-looking stud like you, Doc.
Man, Vito, that's a very odd story that somebody would make that up and then share it so freely, especially in an age where everybody talks and everybody's so connected.
Yes.
It's much harder to lie because if you tell somebody something, most of the time they're going to go and try to get it corroborated by somebody else. And they're going to tell like, oh, okay, so we got back to you and things like that. So very odd story. And again, I would say, we joked around about your dating stature and things like that and the lack of success that you've had. I would say, Vito, that in the 4 to 5 years that I've been really actively practicing psychology, a lot of people don't talk favorably about online dating. It's too many, like the risks of meeting people that are a little bit unusual is a little bit higher. And I would say, you know what, have fun on Tinder, but I wouldn't risk meeting people or talking to people from online. Just do it the old-fashioned way. Go to a nice place like a church or a library. Ask your friends to kind of set you up with people and meet people face-to-face. Online, look, I'm not saying that all online dating is bad and toxic. There have been some obviously loving, passionate relationships that have been, sustained and produced kids and a nice, stable family. But by and large, the road to get there probably is a ratio of like 14 bad apples to one good one.
Yeah, not very likely, you're saying, right, to meet your significant other.
It's going to take 14 bad dates. You might get catfish. You might have someone, make a date with you and then stand you up.
Yeah.
You might get somebody that's like a stage 5 clinger that doesn't want to ever let you go. You might find somebody that's a serial, someone that can't unattach from you, that they want your attention. A lot of people that go online just seem to have some issues, and it just seems that way across the board, men and women, that just the idea of online dating is just a little bit too rough of waters before you get to the other side, before you get to the island. Too rough. I would say, I mean, you could definitely meet somebody that's cool and fun and things like that. You could possibly hook up, but in terms of a relationship, I feel like just meeting somebody saying, hey, how you doing? I saw you over there. Let's go have a cup of coffee. Or, hey, I'm Vito. I saw you over there.
You're hot.
Yeah.
No.
I saw you over there.
Up. Let's have a cup of coffee at Bigby Coffee.
Do you know,
love Bigby.
Do you know who I am? I'm the host of 18 podcasts.
Do you care? Oh, no, you don't care. Okay, you're going to walk away now, huh? Oh, thanks. You're going to burn my card that I gave you, my business card from the DSP network, huh? Really?
So how angry are you that she did this?
I was a bit upset and perturbed, and I found out a while back, actually, at a NASCAR race, MIS, Nick Schmiegel was telling me about it, so I guess I just spilled the beans that he's the one that told me about it. He found out through a relative of his that worked with this girl at Charming Charlie's.
Gotcha.
So I'm giving some details here. She got fired, has been fired since. I guess she's a chronic liar, so she had it coming. And by the way, if she made up that story with me and about a person that she barely even knew, well, you know she was lying about other stuff too. And obviously, she got found out to be a liar and got fired from her job. So there are the pros and cons of online dating, you're right, and you could find out that your person that you're talking to is a serial killer, right? It could be, or just a total creep, a person that doesn't get social cues, that maybe is a stage 5 clinger, and you don't want to deal with the person because of that, or you could be catfished. It could be somebody that doesn't even look like the person right through their online dating profile, or they stand you up. I don't want that to happen to me, and I believe you can find somebody that can be fun to talk to. The thing is, I haven't met, somebody that's like normal, that I can talk to, meet up with, and have a conversation that's really going to go somewhere and maybe have a relationship with. Now, at least in Michigan. Now, in Ohio, I've had more success. I've talked to people that are interested in me. I'm intrigued by them. So it's kind of funny how that's worked out for me so far, that there's more people I like in Ohio than in Michigan. Should I move to Ohio? I'm not going to be a fan of the Buckeyes, though. I can't be a fan of Ohio State. That would never happen.
Listen, as your buddy, I'm not going to advocate for you to get into a long-term relationship, until you're at least 26, 27, have a career, and then think about marriage by the age of 30. That's when you want to go, okay, it's time to, settle down, because your personality is still evolving. You can still have fun. You can still hang with the buddies, take your videos, and do all the things you want to do. And then when you're established in a career that you want to have a long-term job with, then I would advocate starting a date. But now have fun. Just, tell these stories and do the thing.
And they're fun. We haven't talked about this in a while. What was this called? Our segment before? Vito's Dating.
Vito's Love Adventures.
Chronicles or Love Adventures. Yes, Vito's Love Adventures.
Vito's Love Chronicles. So this one took a wild turn in that somebody actually claimed to date Vito, but it never happened.
How about that?
How about
because
that?
they found out I was a podcast host at the
How
Detroit
about
Sports Podcast Network and wanted the acclaim for themselves and, themselves only.
Exactly.
Hey, who knows why? Who knows the motives, truly? I think it had something to do with my size, and she thought it was a cool story to tell that she actually went out with a little person, because probably none of her friends had. And it's not every day you go out with a little person. I get that totally.
100%.
But still, man. Come on.
All right, let's take our first break. Second half of the podcast, I want to talk about two of the bigger issues that kind of sprinkled throughout the last week involving Serena Williams and Hurricane Florence, I believe. So stay with us. You're listening to Two Bad Hombres on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
And Doc, as you know, one of our prime partners at the DSP Network is Top Cat Sales. And Top Cat Sales, since 1999, has been providing and distributing custom apparel with the best quality and the best service possible. And through John Wangler's leadership, Top Cat Sales has become one of the best apparel distribution companies for all brands, including Adidas, in the Midwest, you could say, for Top Cat. And Top Cat Team Sales specifically, they distribute all kinds of great brands of apparel. And to find out more about Top Cat Sales and all of the apparel that they can provide to you, to your team, to outfit your team and your business, your club, your corporation, well then make sure to follow Top Cat Sales at Team Top Cat on Twitter. And also make sure to give them a call if you want to outfit yourself with Top Cat today. You can do so Monday through Friday by giving Top Cat Sales a call at 248-246-1054.
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for finding us across the various platforms. You can download the Detroit Sports Podcast by going and visiting any place that hosts podcasts, Podomatic, Stitcher, iTunes, Podbay, DetroitSportsPodcast.com, anywhere at all where you can find podcasts. And now, we're even on Spotify, Vito. And there's no reason why you can't download the great content that we provide here. So, Vito, I was very fascinated, and to set the scene here, regarding what happened at the U.S. Open women's final. Okay, so Serena Williams is playing this young, upstart, 20-year-old, and she's battling and things like that. And all of a sudden, she starts getting these warnings from the chair. And, in tennis, the way it goes is if your conduct is not becoming of a tennis player, like respectful and things like that, you start getting warnings. And if the warnings escalate and you don't show respect to the umpires or you start showing verbal abuse to your racket and things like that, you get a penalty. Well, Serena Williams was very frustrated and not happy that she was getting her serve broken. And, she threw her racket down. And all of a sudden, the chair, who had previously warned her, had said, look, you're going to lose a point and you're going to lose a game because of it. And she was livid and she was upset. And so she goes to the chair and she's continuing to get upset, become verbally abusive, demanding an apology. and she was highly frustrated, highly upset. She calls over the tournament director and tries to figure stuff out. But in the end, it cost her a full game, meaning that you play a game of tennis, you play 4 points to win a game. So if you lose a game in a tennis match and you get it deducted, erased from the board, that's not a good look. That's not a good thing in terms of sportsmanship. And so what happened was, obviously, Serena goes on to lose the match. She doesn't win the U.S. Open this year. And unfortunately, the winner gets showered with boos, and everyone in the crowd is upset, frustrated. Serena took a minute, but she finally told the crowd, hey, relax. And it kind of ruined this first-time Grand Slam moment for this young girl. And the crowd, I can understand, they felt like, why would you punish Serena Williams? But in the end, when you go back and look at the video, Serena is adamant. I'm not cheating. I would rather lose than cheating. I'm an upstanding mom. And she's getting heated and riled up. Now, afterwards, she then doubles down on it and is like, I'm doing this for the Me Too movement, women's revolution, da-da-da-da. All the while, Vito, it's weird in this country what's happening, and I want to set the scene. There was video of her coach kind of giving a signal, like saying, kind of move up to the net, play a little bit more aggressive, like he gave a signal. You're not technically supposed to do that. Is that a rule violation? Yes. Is it called a lot? No. It's like one of those things where in the NBA, like a little bump or a foul, technically it's a foul. Does it get called all the time? Sometimes it will, but it is wrong. The video, shows Serena's coach having done this hand gesture. And so the argument that she did, and what I don't like about where we're going now in society, is definitely highlighted by what she did. She didn't take accountability for her actions. She didn't, state that, hey, I overreacted. I should have been respectful to the umpire. No, she did what a lot of people do, is she went and used an excuse like, well, men do it and other coaches have done it and they're not called as, strongly as me. And it kind of took a tone of like gender type thing that she wanted to go with. Like, hey, this is an issue of gender inequality, that other men that play pro tennis have their coaches give hand signals and they're not punished as much as me. And I say, look, that may be true, but in life there's right and there's wrong. And in any situation, me and you could go drive and we can go through that red light right at the time when it's red 9 times out of 10 and we're okay. But that one time you go and it's red and you go through it and the police pull you over, you could say, you can't tell the cop, oh, I've done this 9 times before. Nobody's ever caught me, or my friends do it all the time. They never. No, if that moment a rule is enforced, you got to go with it. Your coach did it. You're not supposed to do it. So she doubled down on a mistake by calling out that, no, others have done it too. Why am I being treated so harshly? And that was wrong to do that, because there's video of the coach doing that. You're not supposed to be coached when you're playing. You're not supposed to have that happen. So I can understand why she did it. She was riled up. And when you're playing sports, that's why I wasn't mad at Nick Saban when he blew up at the ESPN reporter asking about the quarterback. Because when you're in that heated moment and you're just walking off, there's adrenaline pumping. That's why in any press conference I've seen, there's always been like a 10 to 20 minute cool down period right after a contest. Because if you got Jim Harbaugh after the loss to Notre Dame, he might have been frustrated. He might have said some things. So to catch these people at that time, I can understand why she was riled up. But in the end, Serena was wrong. And I didn't like the fact that she doubled down on being wrong by making an excuse by saying, I'm being singled out when everybody does it. Look, don't break the rules. You won't get in trouble. Now, should she have done it? Should the coach do it? Yeah, of course. If you're not cheating, you're not trying. So I'm all for that. But once you get slapped on the wrist and you get like a warning, hey, coaching, and stop it. Done.
Did she get a warning before, by the way, before she got docked a game?
Yeah, it doesn't just, unless the violation is so egregious, it's results in that. But no, it was a step up because she was being, slamming her rackets down. She was being really angry. And, you have to have decorum on the tennis court. You can't be like talking and pointing out stuff to the ref and things like that.
How about John McEnroe?
Well,
already berating, always berating the chair ump, right?
Now,
he would do that. No decorum there.
Now he's respected, but back then he was known as bad boy tennis, and a lot of people don't like him for that still. A lot of people don't like John McEnroe because of what he did. Tennis is a sport of decorum. Tennis is a sport where you're supposed to kind of hold yourself to a higher standard, and Serena Williams being that she's a new mom and she's a role model, I feel like, let her emotions get the best of her. So I can understand why at that moment, but she was screaming at the umpire, "I demand an apology," which you can see on our Twitter page as I cut up, and now I've demanded that the Lions give me an apology, Jim Harbaugh, Mark Antonio. So that's a GIF now that we'll use in a video clip, but she was very upset, and she was a little bit threatening of the umpire. She's like, I will never see you in a match that I'm playing in again. And she was just not respectful of the umpire. And a lot of people don't. But in that moment, if you do stuff like that, you're going to lose points. You're going to get a penalty. And here's the good thing. The tournament directors, when they were called, they upheld the ruling of the umpire. They stood by the official. And that's what you're supposed to do. So all credit to the tournament directors. Look, you could definitely say I felt like the punishment was too harsh, but not to use it as an excuse. You have to be accountable. You have to say, look, my coaches were doing some things that, a lot of people do, but at the same time, I overreacted. I shouldn't have reacted that way. I should have just kept it going because it didn't help. It didn't help Serena at all. You lost the match, and it was unfortunate because that action turned the crowd against this new up-and-comer that won a Grand Slam. So I don't like when people get called out using an excuse of, well, everybody does it. Wrong is wrong. Right is right. If Vito's getting away with it, you might say it, but it might cause you to be angry, but be accountable. If someone calls you out for a rule, that's the biggest thing I think this culture has to do better of is you don't have to like the rules. You have to respect it. If you want the rules changed, do what you got to do. But I don't think calling out that, all the men get coached. No, they don't. No, they don't. If you get called out for coaching, people will see it. It's on video. And her coach said it. Yeah, I kind of gave the signal for her to do that. You're not supposed to do that. So I don't like people doubling down on mistakes and doubling down on saying that, well, everybody does it. So, the age-old adage, everybody jumped off a bridge. Would you do it? No. Just be accountable. If somebody calls you out for something, just own it and say, okay, I made a mistake, and go on. No one's going to fault you for doing it. Everyone does do it. You kind of get a little bit of a nick, wink, wink, kind of like some people use hands, there's gamesmanship you can do in tennis to get coaching from your bench. But you got caught this time, so you own it and you go forward. People cheat, and I'm not even mad at her for trying to do it. That's fine. But once someone sees it and says, hey, stop, you got to stop, period. So how did you take it in? Did you see the highlights? Did you see any of it? Did you peek into the article I had sent you?
Well, the age-old adage, I think, is with the guy, when he's berating the ump or really passionate with the umpire or ref, he is being fiery. He is being passionate. The woman gets proclaimed and called as being over the top and being childish or letting her emotions, right, being too emotional and getting worked up. I think it is a double standard, though, right? And it should be a two-way street where both people are held accountable and are labeled the same. So if the guy's doing it, then guess what? He's being emotional, too. He's let his emotions boil over. So people are labeling Serena as being emotional for this incident and saying that her emotions boiled over because she's a woman. Isn't it a double standard? And shouldn't it be more of a two-way street where if the guy does it, it's also his emotions getting the best of him, boiling over, and he's getting worked up, as is the woman in the case of Serena when she did what she did, berating the chair ump? That's where I find fault and where I find it to be sexist. Because the man also, when he is going after the ump or ref, is being extremely passionate. But guess what? He's worked up too. He's letting his emotions get the best of him. Why don't we say that enough about these guys when they're fiery and passionate too, as was Serena in this U.S. Open final, Doc?
Well, you can't control it. I mean, what are you going to do? Just stand there and watch every single match and make sure that it's enforced? I mean, by calling it out, it takes away from the real situation is if you didn't want a point penalty, don't cuss out the ref. If you don't want a point penalty, don't slam your racket down and break it. If you break your racket, there's a penalty called racket abuse. You're not supposed to. But
I'm saying if McEnroe does it or any male tennis player does it, guess what? If you did it, I know you played tennis, guess what? It's not as big of a deal as if the woman does it. The woman looks like, what does she look like? When the woman does it, it looks worse. It looks like she's being emotional. Remember, that label comes out and is applied to these women much more than to the men.
But, Vito, the way you look at it is like this. You can't legislate how other matches are called. I mean, if you point out and you want to say, well, other men don't get it called, fine.
No. I'm saying she deserved the penalty and the game to be docked from her.
Yes.
I'm fine with it. I'm saying how people reacted to it, the perception for this. When the man does it, okay, so he can be docked a game, as he should be, but how about the reaction from the general public? It's not the same as it is with the woman, as in Serena's case.
I feel like,
that's my opinion.
I feel like what people do, and it's a PR technique, it's not something that you just haphazardly do. It's called diversion, and Donald Trump does it the best, where I bring up an issue and you bring up another issue. The issue is this, and you can discuss it and give your thoughts on it. But yeah, I do think that there should be decorum in tennis. I don't think you should be throwing your racket.
So for the man then too. So why don't we criticize the man when he doesn't have decorum? I don't think McEnroe got criticized enough, or some of these big timers that are really good. She's at the top of her game. By far, she's at the top of her game. When McEnroe was at the top of his game, was he being criticized as much?
Yes.
Okay, maybe I don't know because I wasn't around. I didn't grow up during that time. But I think it's still people let him off the hook more easily. They let him off the hook more easily than with Serena for this one incident.
No, people.
You sure?
Tennis players called out John McEnroe to his face on the court for his antics, and right to his face. And there was a perception of him as being toxic for the game. That's always been debated. But yeah, I understand that. Some people may, look at it from a guy's perspective and say if he does it, then it's okay. But I do think a lot of people, when they see that kind of behavior, don't like it in a tennis court because it's a game where they want it to be a little bit more respectful and competitive and have proper sportsmanship. But for me, I don't mind either way if Serena did it. I'm saying, like, hey, if you do it and the ump is like, warning, racket abuse, and you then keep going and then going, oh, da. No, remember, she was already warned. It could have been done. Zip your mouth, get back to the court. That's it. But by then screaming at the referee and demanding an apology and threatening that he's never going to come back, it escalated. So what happened was she got called out. At that moment, look, the way I look at it is if you have a complaint with anybody, a police officer, a school teacher, be respectful in the moment, get to where you got to go and go to the proper channels. Maybe you could have then gone to tournament director on the side and said, hey, was I overtreated? This has kind of been happening a lot. But publicly to embarrass a tournament referee is not a good look because people are watching. So my opinion is for a guy and a girl, the reaction should be, I cringe a little bit. But if you get called out and get highlighted that, hey, you shouldn't do that, hey, then you stop it and you just go forward and, okay, you can kind of cringe in your head and go, okay, I got caught, or, oh, someone else wouldn't have gotten penalized for this, but then you still got to follow the rule, period. Because there are rules that people break all the time and they don't get called for it. But when you do, be accountable. That's all people are. I'm saying is people don't want to be accountable. They want to make excuses. They want to divert it off of them. She made a mistake. That's all. And I do think that when things calm down, she'll come back and say, yeah, it's probably not one of her best moments. But she's ultra competitive. In terms of how big a violation it is, it's not major, but I just think it's indicative of where we're going as a society. All she had to do was say, I was on the court. I got a little bit riled up. I want to win so bad. I got a little bit riled up. I apologize to the ump. No apologies. No. She feels like she was wronged, and I don't like that perception. Own up for what you did and move forward, and that's what it is.
Now, how about the demeanor of male athletes in other sports? They get away with a lot of stuff. Tom Brady, a guy at the top of his sport in the NFL, his demeanor sometimes is him going overboard, right? He carries on too much, too, and complains. He gets fiery and will berate somebody and is extremely passionate. But I think also you could say, label it as, him letting his emotions get the best of him.
Yeah.
Guess what? We don't criticize him, though, because it seems like he's a male at the top of his profession. That is, in the NFL, we let him slide. Let him get away with it a lot of times. It seems like a woman, doesn't it? At the top of her profession doesn't get away with nearly as much as the guy at the top of his profession gets away with.
So what we learned on this week's episode of Two Bad Hombres, if you want to be a woman and slam your racket and be demonstrative, go right ahead. Vito gives you a pass. Go right ahead. Vito's like...
No, I just think the man should be criticized too. Like Tom Brady, he slams his helmet. He's a fiery, passionate dude at times. Do people say he's getting worked up? They don't label it as that, do they? They don't say, oh, his emotions are getting the best of him. He's getting all worked up now. He's emotional. Guess what? The woman gets called that. She gets labeled as such when she's doing what, hey, Tom Brady does, slamming his helmet. Or going after a player and going into his face and just berating the guy. The woman gets called out a lot more easily and gets called out and labeled as getting worked up and being emotional, much more than the man does in the same situation. That is my point. Not that it should happen at all. I don't think you should berate anybody and berate the ref that's officiating your game, your match. That doesn't look good for the athlete. It doesn't. But I'm saying the perception and the reaction from the public should be the same to a man as it is to a woman. That is what I'm trying to say.
Okay, Vito, I can respect that take. It's wrong, but I can respect it, no doubt about it.
And you're wrong, I'm right, but we'll agree to disagree as we normally do here on Two Bad Hombres, it seems like, Doc.
Final topic this week. What's your level of interest in like weather stories and when it comes on? Because, man, CNN, Fox News, the national media, when a weather situation happens, it's full on, full team going down to South Carolina, Myrtle Beach area. Hurricane Florence, I believe, is bearing down, and it's looking like it's causing some havoc. You've seen some of the flooding situations. What's your level of interest in weather-type stuff?
I'm not extremely intrigued by hurricanes, any kind of tropical storm or natural disaster. Now, I feel for the people, and I advocate for them to get the hell out of there where they are. I don't know why people aren't leaving.
I definitely sometimes peek in because sometimes it's funny to see the reporters standing there and they're getting bombarded with the rain.
They're getting blown by the wind. I saw last year a hurricane that hit Florida. This guy, it might have been Hurricane Maria. I forget what it was. This guy was being blown by the wind.
Yeah.
Live on air doing a spot.
Yeah, it was.
Really?
It's fascinating to see the bravery of some of these reporters to try and stand there through a hurricane. But I'm definitely fascinated, and we'll finish this podcast talking about it. What would... and I know people will say that there's been several hurricane alerts and warnings and calls to leave, and then the storm is not that big. But when, at this day and age, especially after Katrina a decade ago, especially when you see the possible devastation that could occur, why wouldn't you err on the side of caution? Is it bravado? Do you think people are just like, I don't believe, and they just feel like, you know what, I'm just going to buck the trend, and I'm not going to let the man tell me what to do? Look, if someone tells me evacuate Macomb, I'm 4 seconds later, I'm packing up just to be cautious. Even if the storm ends up being like a dribble and nothing happens, you still board up your home just to be cautious because you got family, you got your life at stake. Who wants to be without food and power potentially if there's nothing left? Let's say it's a really bad storm and you miscalculated and you only planned for like 5 days of water and food, and then that 6th day comes, there's nothing there, nothing's open. What are you gonna do? It's a situation in which I always err on the side of caution. If someone tells me to evacuate, I'm out. Why wouldn't people leave? I don't get it.
I could never stay in a situation like that. That's why I love it in Michigan. By the way, I love Michigan because of the fact that we don't get the tropical storms. We don't get many tornadoes. We don't have those wild, exotic animals that come and bite you at night or kill you, like the scorpions and the snakes that crawl into your bed and go around your neck and suffocate you or eat you alive. We don't have any of that in Michigan. So Michigan gets a bad rep at times, but I'm all about pure Michigan, baby, when it comes to not having to worry about natural disasters here in Michigan to a large extent. We're in Florida, down south, out west. Well, out west you have the earthquakes in California, right? You have the mudslides, catastrophic mudslides, wildfires, earthquakes. Down south in Florida and other places throughout the nation, you have tropical storms, tropical storm season. Hurricane Florence now is hitting North Carolina, the Carolinas. In totality, it is hitting and affecting. And you can be affected by these tropical storms in the Carolinas. Here in Michigan, you don't have to worry about any of that. That's why I love Michigan. One big reason why I don't have to worry about any tropical storms / natural disasters that make me have to get the hell out of my house because I would be leaving my home. And then I saw somebody last night on CNN talking to Anderson Cooper and talking about a boat they had docked. They were staying in their boat right on the water. You got to be kidding me. There's a hurricane coming. Yeah. Hurricane Florence is coming. You're just staying there in your boat. Isn't that boat going to get wrecked and probably taken up with the hurricane and blown somewhere else? I mean, you gotta take precaution. You got to take measures and steps to, protect yourself, protect your family. But I also say to protect yourself and your family completely, you get the hell out of wherever you are where that hurricane is bound to hit.
The best are the people that are partying and getting drunk. There was this dude, I think, on CNN that was just like, yeah, if it's my time, it's my time. And he was like half drunk and having house guests. And I think his name was Squirrel. His name was
Squirrel.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. It was on the beach.
He was named Squirrel. Is that a nickname? I hope it's a nickname. I hope nobody named him that and then on his birth certificate.
He went by Squirrel, and he's like, if it's my time, it's my time. I'm hanging out. So people were fascinated by those that stay. But yeah, I think it's just safe to say that if you're told by the man to get out, just do it. But Vito, here's the thing. Let's say this takes place. Let's say you have nowhere to go. Maybe the money situation is not the best situation. Would you ever go to a shelter and try to go to a place inland to just stay for maybe a night and see what happens? Or what would you do if maybe money was tight or you don't have family in Michigan or Ohio or Pittsburgh to go to, or you don't have any place inland to go? What would you do?
Go to a shelter then.
You just go
for a night or two. I wouldn't want to stay in there with a bunch of other people that I don't know if they've cleansed themselves recently and taken showers. But that's what you can't worry about that when a hurricane's coming. I'd rather be out of my home than take the risk of staying in your home and being blasted by the hurricane and killed by the hurricane. In the shelter, you're a little bit more protected. You have some food, shelter, obviously, with it being a shelter. Come on. So I would rather do that, stay in there, and I would feel protected for the most part, for a couple of nights at least. And after a couple of nights, I might want to get the heck out of there. But I think it's still safer than staying in your own home. Right? I mean, I think that makes sense to me.
Exactly. I think that's one of those situations in which we hope everybody that's in South Carolina gets out of there safely. We hope Florence doesn't cause too much damage because, man, for businesses, look, in life, and people said it, if you take a week off of a business, you got rent to pay. They don't take a week off of collecting the rent. So it's just one of those situations in which it's devastating across the board. And one final thing again, Vito, I'll ask you this, because I know you're not a big hockey guy, but Henrik Zetterberg announced his retirement earlier on Friday. How will you remember the captain? Obviously, winning the 2008 Conn Smythe was awesome. This is a guy that has been with the organization for quite a while, the captain, and he was just a professional. That's just how I'm going to remember him, as a professional hockey player, a guy that lived up to his talent, did a great job, really did okay as a captain, but unfortunately, you also have to add the fact that he was part of the last couple years of the rebuild and was also part of the team that ended the streak of the playoff consistency and appearances. But overall, A- career. All in all, a great guy. So you give him an A-.
I'll remember him as a champion. As a guy that brought glory and success to the Wings franchise. Towards the end, wasn't the same player, dealt with injuries, and it seemed like a lot of nagging injuries that cost him his career at the very end of things for himself in a Red Wings uniform. Also, you got to remember the fact that, the Wings haven't been relevant now for a couple of seasons. So you do have to take that into account and remember that when it comes to Henrik Zetterberg. But Hank, I would say, had a successful Red Wings career, NHL career in totality, and I would give him a B+ to an A- as well, Doc.
Very good episode of Two Bad Hombres. Every single Saturday, you will hear an episode of Two Bad Hombres. Thanks, everybody, for finding this show as well as the other shows on this network. To find out, if you're curious, go visit DetroitSportsPodcast.com. All the shows are hosted there. You can go on demand. The website is live all the time for your sporting needs. Any content that you're interested in Detroit sports is there at DetroitSportsPodcast.com. We're credentialed media. We have access to all the major sports events in town. So if you have any questions, follow Vito on Twitter at Vito Jerome. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. You can message us anytime. We enjoy conversating. We are the place to go to react to sports in town by far. We read everything. We're engaged. We're funny. And we are the Detroit sports leaders in terms of the place to go to vent your frustrations about the Lions, to discuss your thoughts about the Red Wings. If you're concerned about Vito and his current single status, follow the network at Detroit Podcast. We'll have a good time with it.
Please follow me for that, okay? Give me a tip. Any tips out there about a woman that's single? Let me know about that woman, all right? Have a great weekend, and adios.